All right, food as nutrients, food and working out. I had this thought, and I've got to record it before I forget. When we look at food and how we can be healthy, you can look at all of these different cultures and civilizations around the world that eat very differently from each other, but can produce favorable results in terms of having a healthy population, even though the dishes that they prepare can look very different. You know, the food in Asia versus, South America or something like that. But when we look at working out, a lot of people are basically doing the equivalent of trying to figure out which vitamins and minerals they need, because they're looking at it from a muscle perspective. They're thinking, how do I train, my bicep, and then how do I train my rear delt? How do I train my lat? And so they're trying to isolate the nutrients versus doing the equivalent of looking for whole foods and just getting the macros, getting, the protein, the fat, the carbs from whole foods, and letting all of the small stuff, the micronutrients and everything, that'll take care of itself. So when you're working out, the equivalent of eating whole foods and covering all of the bases there is using movement categories instead of, okay, I got to work my bicep, then I got to work my tricep, then I got to work my quads, and I got to work my hamstrings. You can look at categories. And I learned this from a coach named Dan John, and other people have done it too, but I feel like he was kind of the first. The movement categories that I use are push, pull, squat, hinge, and then loaded carry. Loaded carry is kind of the redheaded stepchild for me. I don't do it as much as I should, but I know it's good. But if you get push, pull, squat, hinge, and some people, if you see other coaches, they will also add in lunge and rotation. But I feel like, those you can put into the other ones. I don't want to muddy the waters. I shouldn't have even said that. Push, pull, squat, hinge. If you do that, you've got the meat and potatoes and your leafy greens of the workout world, and you're going to be great. So a push means upper body pushing. Push something away from you, push yourself up, push something over your head. So that is things like push-ups, bench press, military press, dips. A pull is anything upper body where you're pulling something towards you or you're pulling yourself towards something else. So rows, pull-ups or pull-downs, could even be things like high pulls and ballistic work with kettlebells, some of that stuff, snatches maybe. Then there's things like squat and hinge. Squat is obviously squat, sure, but that can be lunges. It's anything that is quad dominant, something that is going to primarily work your quads. So it can be step ups, it can be leg presses if you want, different squat variations with barbells or dumbbells or whatever. And then hinges are a category of movement that primarily work the backside of your legs. So this is like the deadlift family, but it can also be things like leg curls could fit into that. Any kind of deadlift variations, single leg versions too, kettlebell swings, hip thrusts, all that stuff. So think of it also, to expand on the food analogy further, think of it like when you go to a restaurant, you can pick from a menu, right? So when you're doing your workouts and you want to figure out, what am I going to do so that I get a well-balanced meal, right? So you have, when you eat, you have appetizers, you have entrees, and you have desserts, basically, unless you're doing like something fancy like a 5-course meal. So in working out, you have those categories. You have push, pull, squat, hinge, just like on a menu, and you can fit different things into them. You don't have to eat spaghetti for your entree if you don't like spaghetti. You can have a hamburger, or you can have, the baked fish, or you can have pizza, whatever. So just like that, if for your push, if maybe you don't like push-ups, you can do bench press. You don't like bench press, you can do some kind of one-arm bench press. You can do dips, you can do overhead press. And there's a little bit more depth to figuring out these combinations and things. But that's essentially how simple it can be, guys, when you boil it down. At least as far as strength training, you've got your categories. You pick a move for that category, and you're good to go. So keep it relatively simple. Get in there, have a well-balanced meal in the gym, so to speak, and you'll be good to go. All right, hope you guys have a great weekend.